Hello guys, Lid here. So welcome to the channel. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about my painting process, specifically the early part of the painting process, because I think that part is the most important part of the entire process. So the reference will be on the screen, and I will put a link in the descriptions for the reference. So for the reference, generally speaking, when I look for reference, the most important thing is what I can do with the reference. So sometimes I use reference for like the hair, the eyes, or like certain part of the face, or like certain lighting and all that stuff. But usually there will be one reference that I will use as a base. And I rarely do a painting without reference because I'm terrible at drawing from imaginations. So most of the time I always going to have a reference that I'm going to use on the painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that reference, I'm going to load it into any editing software. In my case it's Photoshop. I will play around with the saturations, the color, the curve level and all that stuff. I sometimes change the shape of the face. I sometimes paint over it. It's really depending on what idea that I have at the time. But playing around with it in the editing software is working really well for me because I'm not really good at imagining stuff. So able to see like directly what things change and what it's going to look like, it's really helpful. So after I'm happy with that, then I will start the painting process. So the first step is always to get rid of the white canvas because I really don't like to start with the white canvas. Number one is way too bright, so everything you put there will be looks a lot darker than what it should be because value is relative to everything around them. Same with color. So I will get rid of the white canvas first, and usually I will just pick whatever color or value that the majority of the background on the image that I'm working on. So in this case, like the background is pretty dark, so I just put something dark on the background. I usually sprinkle in some color here and there. It's just something that I like to do. You don't have to do it, but when I have something on the background and I start to put in the big shape like the face, the hair, the shoulder, clothing and all that stuff. But for the hair, I think it deserves a little bit more attention because in portrait, hair is usually going to dictate the silhouette of the subject. And I do try to make sure that the silhouette looks good, or at least it looks like what I wanted it to be. And hair also act like a frame for the face. So I do put a little bit more attention on hair, especially in the case like what I did right now where I changed the color of the hair from black to white. Now the contrast between the hair and the faces drop by a lot, so I kind of have to figure out a way to kind of bring back a contrast because the face is usually the focal point and I still want it to be the center of the attentions. And after the big shape, I will like to put in the lighting. So which part is light, which part is shadow, I like to establish that early on. I think it's very important to do that because that will give you the general lighting what you're working with. And if you want to add a lighting, you want to like drop a lighting, you want to make the shadow a little bit more dramatic, that's something that you can do early on and you can kind of see how it's going to go. So lighting I think is very important to establish early on, also because lighting is the one that's going to define what the form it looks like, and it's going to be very difficult to render something that if you do not know where the light source coming from. And after the general lighting is there, I will try to put a landmark that I think is very important. For example, like the hair. In this case, I would like to put a little bit shadow to kind of marking the ponytail on the top of the head. And I think that's the entire point of the hairstyle. I think that's what makes it looks good. And as for the hair, number one thing that about the hair that I always trying to remind myself is I want to make sure that the hair always have a volume. So imagine the hair like a big fluffy, like a big fluffy feather or something like that. Because when the hair has a feeling of volume, it doesn't feel like a fabric that you put on someone's head, but it actually feels like a hair. And really depending on like what art style that you do, the hair can be very simple but also can be very complex. I think this is something that you can experiment with. I personally like to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, I say it as simple as possible, but I do use a lot of strand of hair and all that stuff, but that is mostly about texture. Well, if we're talking about just the hairstyle itself, I think most of my drawing the hairstyle is pretty simple. It's just sometimes I over render the hair kind of give it a little bit too many layer, a little bit too much information on the hair. And then for the face, I like to start with eye socket and nose. And this is because in human faces, you can separate them into three big areas. The first one is from the chin to the base of the nose, not the tip, but the base. And for the middle sections is from the base of the nose to the eyebrow, and the upper face will be the eyebrow to the hairline. So you have that three sections, and eye socket and nose basically make up the entire middle sections. And that's really good because I can use that to measure the ratio between that three areas, like how big and small the upper and lower face should be. And this ratio will change depending on your art style, perspective. For example, like if the perspective, if the character is below the horizontal line, then usually the lower face will be a lot smaller than the rest of them. And this ratio is something that you kind of have to play around with. And if you're doing realisms, then usually everyone will have its own ratio. So it's a very important element that going to dictate how the face is going to look like in general. And also, I think depending on the age ratio also change. So that's why I like to start with eye socket and nose. And also with eye socket, it's pretty easy to establish a landmark because what you need to do is just put in a little bit darker value, because eye socket is a little bit deeper inside the face, so the value will be a little bit darker. The nose is also the same, but because nose have a lot of blood vessel in it, so that's why you kind of often see the nose have like a lot of reddish color. In some lighting, like this one, the light coming from top right, we will have a cast shadow on the below of the nose, and we can use that as a landmark for the nose. And because the eye socket and nose is pretty huge area, I mean it's entire middle section of the face, it's pretty easy to eyeball them. So after that, I will start to working into like a small and smaller sections, because usually after I'm done with the marking and all that stuff, the general idea of the painting is already established. Not the informations, but just the general idea, and that's usually good enough for me to like start rendering here and there. And nowadays, I like to render an area around the target. So for example, like if I trying to like put in the eyes, what I like to do is to render the area around the eyes first, and then I will render the eyes after that. And by rendering the area around the eyes, you kind of give a context to what the eye is going to look like, and how dark the eye should be, how dark the white part of the eyeball, which usually I think a lot of people kind of make it a little bit too bright, and how big the eye, which is a problem that I still have until now. Sometimes I do have to like go away from the painting and come back just to see properly, because the problem with painting is when you do it for like a certain period of time, for me it's like 30 minutes to like an hour. After that, it's usually like my brain is start to get used to it, and I will start to misjudge like the proportions and all that stuff. So usually when I get to this phase, I like to just drop the painting, go away for like 30 minutes or like an hour doing something else, and then I will come back and basically make a judgment like, okay, do I want to continue with this is proper or not? And if I think this is proper, then I will continue with it, and I will start to work into a smaller and smaller area. So one last thing that I forget to talk about is the mouth. So the area of the mouth, the chin and the bottom cheek connected to the jaw and the mouth area, and that area, basically the lower part of the face, that part is, in my opinion, is the most complicated part of the entire human face. There's a lot of like small changes here and there. There's a subtle change of like the plane, subtle change of value, color, and all that stuff. And because a lot of the changes is very subtle, it's kind of hard to see, especially if you're new. You're probably not going to be able to see that. But if you do some field training with it, keep looking and keep trying to find it, at some point you will get used to it. But the plane changes on that area is very, very subtle. So I usually start with the mouth, not the area around the mouth, exactly because of that. For the mouth, I like to use 4 small shape. And no, it's not a dot. If you pay attention to when I draw a mouth, the shape that I put there is not a dot. So 2 of the shape will be the corner of the mouth, which depending on the perspective, some of them may not be seen. But if you see them, that is landmark I'm looking for, and that will dictate the curvature between the mouth and go up to the like the upper mouth and the cheek, and then it also going to dictate the curvature from the corner of the mouth to the chin and the low and the jaw. So that's a little shape on the corner of the mouth is really really important for me. And the other two shape is the small little shape usually between the center of the mouth, specifically below the cupid bow part. It's a very small shape, almost like a triangle, and that's basically a result of the cast shadow from the upper lips. I like to use that two shape to determine like where is the center of the mouth, because depending on the perspective, it will be a little bit left, it will be a little bit right. So that's four shape that I like to use to define mouth, and this one works for me better than I'm just drawing a line, because drawing a line is a little bit harder to see like the three dimension of it, like, or like at the very least like the shape of the lip itself. So using this small shape kind of help me to like kind of imagine the shape of the upper lips, the bottom lips, and all that stuff. And in the case of there is a cast shadow, in this case there is, because the light is on the top right, I like to start with the shadow of the mouth first, because that usually going to give me a clue on like how dark everything it should be, because the cast shadow on it is pretty dark, because the area is pretty small, so there's not that much area for the light to bounce around, and that kind of give me a context to like how dark the areas around it should be, which is kind of a little bit of reversal from like what I do on the other stuff, because on the other stuff like on the eyes, I like to render the area around the eyes that gives context to the eyes. But you can also basically do the opposite. I will suggest just try both ways and see which one works. So that's generally how I start painting. I mean, nowadays I kind of follow the same patterns because it have been working very well for me. So I hope this one is helpful. And if you guys have any questions, just leave in the comment below. I will try my best to answer all of the questions. I do answer my comment. I do try my best to reply to everyone, as long as the comment is being reasonable. So yeah, I think this is all I have for you today. I will leave you guys with the time lapse, and thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next one.